On the evening of the 5th of November, 1940, twilight cloaked the Atlantic Ocean as a group of British vessels slowly made their way across its waters. Their vital mission was to deliver desperately needed supplies to war-torn Britain. At the very heart of the convoy, like a lone sentinel, steamed the armed merchant cruiser proudly bearing the name HMS Jervis Bay. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the silence from the bridge. Unidentified ship sighted. Captain Edward Fegen wasted no time. "Hard a port, intercept that vessel," he ordered decisively. The Jervis Bay swiftly altered course, veering out from the center of the convoy and charging headlong into the unknown. Simultaneously, another command rang out, "Send the challenge signal." 10 seconds ticked by as the crew awaited a reply. But instead of the expected response, the mysterious ship returned the exact same signal. In that instant, the British sailors grasped a chilling truth: no friendly vessel would ever answer like that. It had to be the Germans. Action stations! Sirens wailed across the Jervis Bay as the crew, gripped by the adrenaline of impending battle, rushed to their posts, readying guns, and preparing the ship for the inevitable clash. On the bridge, Fegen's blood ran cold as he caught sight of the enemy's true form. It's a pocket battleship. Before them loomed the German warship Admiral Scheer, one of the Kriegsmarine's most formidable vessels. Armed to the teeth, it possessed more than enough firepower to obliterate the entire convoy. The Jervis Bay stood no chance in a direct fight. Yet if it could hold the Scheer at bay, even briefly, it might buy the convoy precious time to escape. "Order the convoy to scatter. Fire star shells and lay a smoke screen." "Aye, sir." The evening sky erupted in crimson light as the Jervis Bay launched flares high into the heavens. On cue, the merchant ships broke formation and began turning sharply to starboard. "Keep clear. He's about to open fire." Captains pushed their engines and rudders to the limit, desperately maneuvering to avoid collisions. On board the Jervis Bay, sailors hurled smoke canisters overboard, and thick grey clouds billowed skyward, swiftly cloaking the convoy in an impenetrable veil. Fegen knew what lay ahead. Hard a starboard, full ahead, closed the range. The Jervis Bay surged straight toward the enemy, drawing all attention onto itself. 10 nautical miles away, aboard the Scheer, Captain Theodore Crank and his crew raced full speed toward what appeared to be a helpless convoy. At that moment, a report came in: "Captain, one of the merchant ships is charging us. Looks like a steamer. Do they even have guns?" "If they do, sir, they're not our caliber." "Port helm." Crank ordered a course change, swinging his ship broadside to face the oncoming threat. On the bridge of HMS Jervis Bay, Captain Fegen watched as the enemy lined up for its first salvo. Confident the merchantmen were now hidden from German guns, he gave the order, "Open fire." On the forward gun turret, veteran seaman Sam Pattons rammed a shell into the breach. But the Scheer remained just out of range of the Jervis Bay's modest 6-inch guns. Sam kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, ears ringing as the Scheer's massive 11-inch guns roared, tearing through the sky. Shells screamed over the sea for more than 20 seconds before crashing down ahead of their bow, sending towering columns of water skyward. The German gunners were finding their range, and with a deafening thunderclap, the Scheer fired a second salvo. Huge geysers erupted near the stern. "They've bracketed us! Fire!" The German guns roared again. This time, it was a direct hit. The bridge exploded in a blinding flash. Fegen crumpled to the deck, struggling to rise, but searing pain shot through his shoulder. In that instant, he realized his arm was gone. Yet even with this devastating injury, his resolve held firm. Gritting his teeth, he staggered down from the bridge, leaning on a crewmate for support. Shells continued to rain down every few seconds, and soon the entire superstructure began collapsing under the relentless bombardment. One round even blew apart the white ensign fluttering from the mizzenmast. "Stay at your posts." The crew looked up as splintered wood and glowing embers rained onto the deck, and the tattered white flag drifted down. Still, the British sailors remained calm. "Fire emergency." They trained for this, and now that training showed. Fire parties battled the raging flames with hoses. "Keep firing the guns." Surviving gunners held their ground. One sailor scrambled up the shattered mast with the help of a comrade and hoisted a new white flag. A cheer rose from the surviving crew. "They're firing again." Fegen wrestled with agony as he weighed his next move. "Stay at your posts. They're lining up another salvo." He saw the Scheer turning its secondary 6-inch guns toward the fleeing merchantman. The Jervis Bay's relentless resistance was the only thing preventing the German ship from unleashing its main batteries on the convoy. Fegen pulled himself upright. With the bridge destroyed, he had to reach the aft conning position. Only from there could he still steer the ship and issue commands. His body was failing, but supported by a crewmate, he moved as fast as he could. Meanwhile, Sam and his gun crew frantically kept up their fire. He loaded another shell and braced for the blast. The projectile arced gracefully, then vanished harmlessly into the sea. Sam watched in frustration as it disappeared beneath the waves. The Scheer remained unscathed, continuing its relentless advance. "We might as well be throwing potatoes," someone muttered bitterly. True, their shells caused no visible damage, but every shot forced the Scheer to focus on them, buying the convoy priceless seconds. Sam prepared to fire again, when a colossal explosion hurled him backward. Agony ripped through his body as he slammed onto the deck. Then everything went black. Aboard the Scheer, Captain Crank watched coldly as flames engulfed the Jervis Bay. The burning British ship still blocked the shortest path to the merchants, and despite its damage, one of its 6-inch guns stubbornly kept firing. Though the British rounds posed no real threat, the mere risk of a lucky hit unnerved Crank, preventing him from simply sailing past. He had no time to detour. "If that ship won't surrender, it must be destroyed," Crank declared with icy resolve. Sam slowly regained consciousness amid the chaos. Through blurred vision, he saw Captain Fegen limping toward the aft conning position. If Fegen reached it, he might regain control and steer them clear of this desperate situation. Sam watched and shouted encouragement, "Come on, sir." Fegen was nearly there when a German shell screamed toward him. The aft conning position erupted in a fireball. Sam flinched at the blast and watched in horror as Fegen vanished in a whirlwind of flame and shrapnel. Clutching the railing, Sam waited as the smoke cleared, and finally saw his captain's motionless body, defiant even in death. Seconds later, another shell struck home, piercing the hull. Flames burst from below deck, delivering a crippling blow. The Jervis Bay shuddered violently, rolling widely before beginning to list as seawater rushed in. "Abandon ship," came a desperate cry. Everywhere, sailors donned life jackets and began evacuating. Dazed and wounded, Sam suddenly found himself alone. All lifeboats were gone. His only option was to jump. He stared down at the icy water below. Like many aboard, he couldn't swim. "I've got to get out of here." But then he spotted a lifebuoy still in its cover. Fighting through pain, he dragged himself across the deck and lunged for it. He tugged at the cover, straining every muscle, but the buoy wouldn't budge. "Come on," he hissed through clenched teeth. He felt the ship shifting beneath him. Every second brought him closer to a frozen grave. "Come on." Summoning his last strength, he pulled again, and this time, the lifebuoy came free. Sam leapt. He hit the water hard, plunging beneath the surface, gasping as cold air filled his lungs. Kicking and clawing, he fought his way back up, coughing and choking. He glanced back at the sinking Jervis Bay, and with horror, saw men still on deck, unable to swim, too afraid to jump. He had no idea where to go. Maybe he could find one of the lifeboats. Shivering violently, he began paddling into the darkness. On the Scheer's bridge, Captain Crank couldn't help but admire the enemy crew's sacrifice. "God knows, those men have done their duty by their country," he said with quiet respect. Now, he could resume the hunt. Peering into the gloom, he spotted HMS Ranjitiki, a massive transport steaming away. He set course and gave chase. "Hard A starboard. Engage the largest target," he ordered. The Ranjitiki twisted and turned, trying to evade the German warship. but the Scheer fired and scored a direct hit on the stern. The transport was badly damaged, trailing thick black smoke. Crank believed he'd claimed his second victory of the night, only to watch in frustration as the huge ship vanished behind a smoke screen. Night deepened, and miles away, Sam battled the icy water. His wounds throbbed, the cold stabbed him like 1,000 needles. He didn't know how much longer he could last. Then, through the darkness, he saw a small shape and heard familiar voices carried on the waves. A lifeboat filled with men searching for survivors. He paddled toward them, fighting the swell. With his last ounce of strength, he hauled himself aboard. Collapsing at his shipmates' feet, he joined them in huddling together for warmth through the long, freezing night. They watched as HMS Jervis Bay finally slipped beneath the waves. The white flag they'd proudly rehoisted disappeared last. All that remained was a field of debris and men who hadn't made it. In the distance, flashes lit the horizon and muffled booms echoed as the Admiral Scheer pursued another merchantman. More explosions tore through the sky as the freighter took hits and began to sink. Meanwhile, aboard the Scheer, Captain Crank grew increasingly impatient. Too much precious time had been lost in the grueling duel with the Jervis Bay, and now his ship hunted in total darkness. Finding merchant vessels under these conditions was far more difficult, and, more troubling still, ammunition was running low. "Cease attack. We're chasing ghosts," he commanded. The Admiral Scheer glided away, vanishing into the vast expanse of the ocean. "I never thought it could be this cold," one sailor exclaimed. An ominous silence settled over the North Atlantic. The men in the lifeboat knew their chances of rescue were slim. By strict orders, merchant ships were to proceed straight to Britain without deviation to assist survivors. Yet after several agonizing hours, the castaways spotted approaching lights. Hope, it seemed, had finally arrived. "We're here," they shouted desperately, waving their arms. "Hey, help us!" As the large ship drew near, unfamiliar voices carried across the water. "Lifeboat sighted," came the call. They exchanged anxious glances. Would they become prisoners? But the vessel wasn't German. It was the Swedish freighter Storholmen. "Captain, survivors," a crewman cried. The Swedes carefully hauled the frozen men aboard. In all, the Storholmen and her courageous crew rescued 68 of the Jervis Bay's 256 crewmen and safely delivered them to Canada. Thanks to the British ship's heroic sacrifice, nearly all the merchant vessels escaped the Admiral Scheer. For his extraordinary valor, Captain Fegen was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross.